Hello guys, it's Ryan Ho back with another video. Today we'll be comparing Flagship DACs. So we have these two, which is $1,000, $900. The SMSL SU-X is the best DAC I've heard. This has finally trumped the topping D90 SC3. This one was previously the best DAC I've heard, but this one has definitely taken the cake. Now I also did another comparison of the topping to its predecessor, the topping D92, as well, to see the improvements on that. But essentially, I've done a lot of comparison in the past between different DACs with the same chips, like the ES9038, which is a Saver DAC, and something that was $500, and then something that was $900. And of course, the more expensive one did sound a little better. And now we're using the newest chip, which is the ES9039, and the same type of body of the topping D90 3, but I actually thought because they look so similar that maybe they would sound very similar. But my actual surprise, because the two, my dad actually bought it because we thought it was the best DAC we've ever heard, and he bought it. But in doing that comparison, we noticed that they were actually very different, which was just very surprising. Like in your mind, you're just like, they can't be that different. They're just like one generation chip, same body, but they were actually different. I think noticeably different. So we'll talk about that. And then after that, we'll be comparing the topping D93 to the SMSL SU-X to see the difference between these two. And I feel like this is going to be a pretty surprising video. I basically reviewed this on speakers with my dad. My dad has like a really high-end speaker, and I feel like listening to DACs on speakers is just really easy. You can just hear how big, how wide they sound, how different they sound. It's just very apparent, very easy to do it. And so I also did it with my dad, so it helps having two people listening and two different perspectives, which is also nice. So I also want to thank APOS Audio for sending both of these out for this review and making this review possible. So if you guys are interested in buying any of these, you guys can head over to APOS Audio to pick these up. And I think right now they actually have a sale on the SMSL stuff, the topping stuff, as well as some X Duo stuff, I believe, as well as like some Moondrop stuff. So they're running a sale right now, so you guys can check out their deals. So it comes to this DAC, it's pretty cool. So you can see that it has the all metal design. It actually has some fins on the side over here to kind of relieve the kind of heat, because it has two linear power supplies, so it does definitely get a little hot. You can hold the button right here to go backwards. You can click it to go inside the menu systems. You can change a bunch of stuff like filters, your inputs, your outputs, your kind of sound color settings. So you really have a lot of different things you can choose from, but really the control scheme of this is really nice. And it's also a colored screen as well. So really, I really do kind of like this type of DAC because it's really easy control scheme, honestly. And it feels really nice, premium. You have a little tactile little button right here. The screen is also kind of a little raised above the actual device, giving it a little bit of a unique aesthetic. But really, there's nothing but positive things to say about the build of this. It's definitely much more premium, much better build than even their previous stuff, and I really do like it a lot. When it comes to kind of the port selection, it comes with a lot of, the ones you find in a flagship DAC. But the funniest thing that I noticed about this is it actually comes with a B and a C. And you can actually use the B or the C. So there's really two inputs for USB. And I just thought it was like interesting that they wanted to put two for both type of people. Like the C is the new one, but if you had the older B cables, you can also use those as well. Very kind of unique, but honestly nice to have that. You have two options. Really, when me and my dad were listening to the topping D92, the thing that we noticed about it first was that me and my dad, when we listen to it, we don't talk to each other at all in the beginning because we don't want to influence each other's thoughts. So we just kind of stay silent, and we're switching it back and forth twice. And then I started saying something, I was like, they sound different. But I think it's because the filters are probably not the same. And then we checked the filter, and they were not using the same filter. The 2 was using filter 1. The 3 was using filter 3. So then we realized that we had to put them on the same filter. Now, even when we put it on the same filter, they still sounded very different anyways, and I still heard the same differences between them, right? And so at the end of this, me and my dad were like, okay, we could definitely hear the difference, right? All right, so when you're listening to speakers, I brought these for demonstration purposes. But what I noticed about the topping D92 was that a lot of the sound was kind of more in the center right here. It didn't really extend beyond the speaker. Everything was like very focused in the middle. It was actually not that tall either. Like the height of it wasn't that tall. And so you definitely noticed that the topping was just very, I guess, narrow and focused in the center. Versus the D93, it was like they wanted to do a whole different type of presentation. Like it was just big, wide, everything was like spacious. You can literally hear it go like taller and also wider. And they had also better depth and better separation, and it also sounded brighter as well on the topping D93. So like I feel like all those kind of combinations, and when I say brighter, it also sounded like, I guess, sharper. There's definitely like a little bit like, I guess, crispier, a little bit more like trebly type of tones. My dad actually didn't like that. He said it was a little too much and he felt like it would be maybe fatiguing over a long period of time. He liked a little bit more mellow type of DAC in that sense, because it did sound extra crispy on this one. But we also noticed that like the topping D93, even though it sounded bigger and wider, it almost sounded almost like artificially like widened. Like it felt like it had too much depth, and like you could definitely tell the difference of like when you're listening to a song. So like we were listening to, let's say, Risk by Gracie Abrams, and you could just hear how her voice on the first topping too, the topping D92, was really just in front of you. You really felt like you're like the microphone, like you're in front. But then when you listened to it on the 3, it just like pushed everything back. And she felt like she was just far away. You felt like you're sitting further away from her while she was singing. And the details didn't feel as like intimate and in front of you. And I felt like it's crazy how like 2 DACs sound so different, but it really is kind of the difference. For me, I do think the 3 is better in the aspects of like separation and depth. Like you can definitely tell it was much better than the 2. And then obviously the sound stage is bigger, but the only thing that we didn't like I said, is that it was almost too far. The depth was almost too much. And I didn't feel like I was close enough to the music on the topping D93 in that type of like comparison, right? Moving from that, we decided to test the topping D93 to the SMSL SU-X. Now, these 2 DACs are the same in the sense that they're both using the ES9039, which is the ES Saver's flagship DAC, the latest, newest thing. So they're the same DAC, but then the way they're different is that you can definitely just feel by the heft of the SMSL is a lot heavier because it has 2 linear power supplies, which are, you know, components that people are consider a much more expensive type of component, much more pricey, and you get in much more expensive type of DACs that they're incorporating into the SMSL. And while this one is presumably using the switching power supply as it was before. So the difference between these is, I would say this is probably more power efficient. It doesn't really get hot at all. This gets like really hot. It's very heavy, but you're getting the improved components that should translate to better sound. And really, I do hear it as, you know, sounding better in general. So I do think it definitely is doing something. So the linear power supplies on this is definitely something that's really notable. So when doing this comparison, you know, me and my dad plugged the SMSL SU-X in, and within like 30 seconds, we're just like, yeah, this is the one. Like we just knew that this is the best one. Like on the table, it was clearly doing something that the other 2 were not doing, right? So, you know, before I was saying how like the topping D92 sounded like you're intimate, while the 3 sounded like things are far away. This one kind of took the kind of intimacy and the detail to like another level. Essentially what you heard was, you felt like the vocals, like the mid-range, a lot of the, you know, male, female singers just like popped out. Like the mid-range was so good on this one. They just popped out in front of you. It was very like intimate, like in front of you. But when it came to like how big and like how tall it sounded even taller than the topping. Like it was just like, it felt like it had no limits. It just was like very tall and very wide. So unlike the, you know, the topping D92, which was kind of very focused and kind of small in the center, the SU-10 really was just huge. Like it was just ridiculous how you're not only playing close to the music, but it's also very huge. Like it was just amazing. And then the other thing was, when it came to like the separation, the detail, I feel like honestly these are very like detail oriented DACs, you know, because you're just closer to music, you really pick out those details a little bit better on this one. However, I would say 1 or 2 aspects about the D90, you know, three that people might actually like was, the sharper type of treble on top. I feel like, some people might like those like sharper transients a little bit. I feel like it, like my dad's saying, like he likes the more mid-range focus type of sound, which is less fatiguing and much more kind of you can listen to and enjoy for long periods of time. This one does still sound a little sharper. I felt like the SMSL, I would say it was just dead neutral, honestly. Like you can hear everything without it being like, I guess you can say it's a little overly sharp. My dad found it overly sharp. I thought it was okay, but it's definitely, you can tell it's sharper. The other thing about it is that it has a lot of depth to it, right? So it's very deep sounding, maybe overly deep, but I feel like the depth of it was, a little bit, I guess, more than the SMSL. So I can see some characteristics of that depth that people might prefer over the SMSL if you don't want all your music to be like very kind of forward in front of you. So I feel like those two things could be preferences of why someone would choose the topping. Now, the bass is the thing I haven't even talked about yet. Me and my dad agreed the topping D92 had the least amount of bass. The 3 definitely felt like they improved the bass. It felt like it had a little bit more kind of impact, a little bit more in there, but it felt a little bit more like less controlled, maybe a little bit more sloppier on the 3 versus the 10 just like took the bass to like another level. The bass on this thing is like really deep. It's very just full. It is like so full. I've never heard bass so full from a DAC like in my whole entire life. It's just so impressive how much better the bass of this while still being like controlled, but maybe a little thicker than you'll hear on kind of more, I guess, not as good kind of DACs. And so really like my dad was saying this, that I always complained when I listened to speakers because I like to listen to a lot of EDM songs for fun. And I would complain like, oh, this just doesn't sound like it has enough bass. The bass just doesn't sound right. Because I've been to so many like, shows. I've heard so much of it. Like I know how bass should sound. And I was like, always felt like his speakers didn't have enough bass. But then the second we hooked this up, it felt like the speakers almost had too much bass. Like the bass just was so full, it came out so alive. Like I noticed this also when I was listening to headphones on this DAC through my amplifier as well. So the way that this kind of DAC really presents the bass is really something different, something else. I feel like if you're looking for that more fullness in your kind of chain, your speakers or whatever, I feel like this DAC really does that a lot. I think that's the thing that I actually like the most about this, besides the fact that like I'm really like to listen to a lot of like mid-range focus, like vocal focus type of music. So this also enhances that, making this really, really, really one of my favorite DACs I've ever heard. Like at this point, like hearing this, we can just tell how much better it was than these. We were just enjoying the music, listening to whatever we want. And here comes a second comment from my dad that was just hilarious. He was basically like going through some of his older music that he likes to listen. He wanted to see how well it would sound on this highly resolving DAC and on the system. And then he was playing some like Chinese songs that I didn't even know, but like we could just instantly tell, and I could just see the disappointment in his face as well. When he was playing these songs, he was just like, these songs just don't sound that good on the system. And that's because like once you get to like a really resolving system, all the kind of the quality of the track is very apparent. And what I mean by the quality is like, certain, songs are engineered to be really high quality. So like, for example, if you listen to like a lot of Billie Eilish songs, those songs are really, really high quality. You can definitely hear the depth. You can hear like how well the sounds are separated. It's just mastered a lot better. But if you listen to like a lot of older songs, a lot of time they're just not that well separated. Like all the instruments sound like they're in the center. They're very focused. The details don't pop. They're not separated. It's just all kind of in the music file at that point. And because you can hear everything, because these DACs are just so highly resolving, you can literally hear everything. And it's just so apparent how the quality of the music you're listening to just isn't that great. And that kind of disappointed him. And he was just saying how like he would rather listen to these songs like on his smaller speakers where it's just less resolving and less apparent that all the flaws in the music track is there. And so really, I think that is just the greatest compliment you can give to like this DAC, as well as just like the system that's just highly resolving that you can hear everything so kind of transparently, honestly. So anyways, of all that mumbo jumbo, like I really do think that if you're looking for the best DAC, it's definitely the SMSL SU-10. The last joke that like I made with my dad was like, this is the best DAC now. We thought the D90, which we thought was the best DAC, and that's why he bought it, was that good. And then we were just so much impressed with this one. Like, what does next year have in store for us? Like, it is quite honestly awesome when you just hear it just keep getting better and better and just hearing, you know, I guess better music or more transparent music, I guess. But anyways, the future looks bright, and I definitely give this like a 10 out of 10, an S tier. If you want to call it for DACs, this would definitely be like my S tier. This would be like my A tier, A plus tier. For sure, like these are really, really good DACs, but this one definitely takes the cake for me. Anyways, I hope this video helps you guys. Please like and subscribe down below. Helps my videos out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.